And on the eighth day, God looked down on the United States Senate and said, I need a legislator. So God made a Grassley. God said, I need a senator willing to wake up before dawn, own libs, cook ribs, work all day, own more libs, then go back to Iowa to visit all 99 counties. So God made a Grassley. I need somebody who ignores every Democrat plea, for we need 9, only to turn around and use it against them when they try to pack the court. Somebody who cuts taxes, funds, vaxes, plows a field, and does 1,000 push-ups before noon. So God made a Grassley.
Democrats are set to take control of the U.S. Senate, House, and the White House.
This will go down as one of the most progressive administrations in American history.
God willing, everything is on the table.
You now can pass things without a filibuster threat. That's right.
Oh, you'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
So God made a Grassley. What a wonderful way to start the program.
Outstanding opener. And I can't say enough how excited I am to have Senator Chuck Grassley on the episode. Been a huge fan of his for a long time. It's going to be an absolute treat, folks.
It is. He was wonderful. I can't wait to get to the interview. He runs the gamut. It gives you a little bit of everything, and he was as good as advertised. We love having him on. The thing that I didn't fully appreciate after or initially talking to him is how much humor he finds in his own Twitter account.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he already runs one of the best Twitter accounts out there. Like, if you don't follow him, folks, instantly follow Chuck Grassley and @GrassleyWorks. But he knows he's good at Twitter, which, I applaud. He earned it.
I appreciate his takes on the History Channel.
Totally.
It's great. The guy, he just brings the heat on the History Channel constantly.
He works harder than anybody in the business, and we're happy to have him on the Variety program. We also have another special treat that you've been waiting some days for. The one and only Matthew Foldi joining us here.
Folks, it is great to be here as the first journalist interviewed on the Ruthless Variety program. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wait, we had Guy Benson on, right?
Well, Chicago is better than Northwestern.
There we go.
I mean, Megyn Kelly, too.
Yeah. Good job. Yet again, Foldi screws up, but it's okay.
I would say she's a commentator, but okay, fine.
So for the folks at home, Matthew Foldi is my assistant. He's at times helps accomplish the things I try to get done. And there was a bet, as you may recall, where for him to be able to come on the show, he had to raise $10,000 for charity. Why don't you go into that, Matthew?
Well, it was mostly Duncan's idea, as well as everyone who wanted me to get a haircut, which was every minion and my grandma. It ran the gamut. No one was a fan of my hair.
Yeah, I mean, it was past his shoulders, folks. Like,
can I
really
interrupt?
Out of control. I wouldn't have it any other
second. Way. Foldi, let me just interrupt for a second.
Please.
I'm still not a fan of your hair. I'm looking at it right now, and
I feel too long.
You got a haircut, but it's like it's a real flock of seagulls situation you've got.
Yeah, that's the thing. So we gotta get photos on. So you tweet out the photos from the haircut, but let me tell you, folks, this is an absolute flock of seagulls haircut that he has going on. So I mean, you know what? Here's the thing: is I was a bit miffed that he was allowed to have a professional cut his hair, and I was hoping we could do something that actually makes him feel bad. But having a flock of seagulls haircut, at least that's getting your money's worth, right, people?
I will say I showed my barber the Norman Rockwell photo that Smug sent me, and he said, your hair has to look like this. And I said to my barber, Jew, a great barber, look, I want a mixture between this Norman Rockwell thing and here's a normal photo of me pre-COVID hair. And I think he did Norman Rockwell, and you guys are out here saying it looked like an 80s rocker, but we'll let the minions decide.
You look like an asshole. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
But that's always true.
No, Foldi.
Well, that has nothing to do with my hair.
I will say, hats off. Good job raising $10,000 for a wonderful cause, feeding America. Good work.
Yeah,
I think what we'll have to do is we'll get a photo here of Foldi's haircut, and we will put it next to the flock of seagulls photo. We'll tweet it out at Ruthless Podcast. So after you listen to the episode, go to the Twitter and you decide for yourself.
I like that. Perfect.
I do want to tout Duncan for a second here, though. Duncan and I were chatting, and he said, dude, you've got to get a haircut. Like, we can't allow you on the program unless your hair is cut. And I said, look, it's an audio-only program. And he said it's sort of a point of pride for us. We can't have hippies on. Fine, I understand. Again, you did have Guy Benson on. But Duncan said, look, if you raise $1,000 or if you raise $5,000, we'll have you on. And I said, are you kidding me? On December 31st, 2020, I shaved my facial hair and live streamed it. Classic e-boy manner, and raised over $1,000 for the Gary Sinise Foundation. So I said to Duncan, look, if I can raise $1,000 in 90 minutes with no notice, I think we can do 10,000. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. The Holmes cutting my hair with shears thing at $5,000. I had no say in any of that. That was the Pod Bros over here, but it was Duncan's idea to tie it into a charity fundraiser. And I am really pleased. The Minions stepped up. In 6 days, we raised over $10,000. And as Smug says all the time, $1 for Feeding America feeds 10 people. So over $10,000 fed over 100,000 people, which is, 0.3% of America. So, seagulls on my hair or not, that's a deal I'm willing to take. The Minions really stepped up there.
No, outstanding. Great job. We appreciate a
very nice job.
Great cause. But let's get into this interview. Let's make it nice and snappy and quick. So I think the folks at home would be interested to know how the heck, did we cross paths in the first place, Foldi? What's the origin story there?
The origin story is fantasy football, believe it or not. I was at the House Super PAC, Congressional Leadership Fund, and in a very early episode of the program, you heard Dan Constant, the very stellar head of that organization, talk about it. But basically, it is the Super PAC of the House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy in this case. And its sole purpose is to elect Republicans and defeat Democrats. And I was sitting in my office, I was working on an office fantasy football pool. And I love fantasy football because of the TV show, The League, unbelievably the funniest show ever. And I reached out to Smug. I said, look, you don't know me, but I'm a huge fan, as everyone is of Smug's. And what I think would be great is if we could do Minion fantasy football. And he leaves me on red, doesn't say anything.
Yeah. To go back, so my history, I have a checkered history with fantasy football. In college, I dominated all the leagues I was in with friends. And, honest to God, I got so good, I got kicked out of the league because it was just, impossible to compete with me. So ever since then, I had vowed never to play fantasy again since that experience. But Foldi somehow talks me into it.
I did not know at the time that I was reactivating this very traumatic experience for Smug. And I can attest from being in a fantasy football league with Smug, this man is a genius. He in our first season, he was trading Todd Gurley for Christian McCaffrey back when both were very good. He fleeced everyone in trades. He's doing like 19 transactions a day, like he's on the floor of the stock exchange, trying to dump GameStop. And he's a killer. But so Smug said, finally, I followed up a couple times and he said, you know what? I respect the persistence. You tweet it out. You do all of the work. I'll share it. And I don't want to have anything. I don't want any management over here. You just do all the work for me. And then it's fine. Which, that's a huge surprise in hindsight, right?
Yeah. And that's, going forward, it was the same situation. I'll say this, whether it's.
That's basically been your life with Foldi, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's managing my schedule, contacts, anything, these are very important things, my schedule is insane. But somehow Foldi manages to make sure I know what's going on, keep my meetings in check, and help out. It's a lot of work, and he does his best. So I'll give him that, folks.
I do try it. So then what happened after Smug shared it out, though, was every Minion in the world blows up my DMs. I have to turn on open DMs. I had never had those on before. And all of a sudden, we're looking at over 20 fantasy football leagues. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I love fantasy football, but I can't just do the same thing every time. So I decided to blow up the draft rules and the scoring systems. So some leagues would have no quarterbacks. Some leagues would have 5 kickers. A lot of leagues would have individual defensive players. So if you're a fan of the sport, you should avoid my leagues. But if you just want to have fun, they're always a hell of a good time.
Absolutely. And okay, so why don't we do this? So I think we've given him enough time. Are there any closing thoughts you have for us today, Foldi?
Well, one thing that I am so excited for is once, thanks to Operation Warp Speed or Operation Lightspeed, whichever is the wrong one, we will be.
Jesus, now I know where it comes from.
Right? Exactly.
No comments. As we hopefully get over and end COVID, getting back to what we did beforehand, which was Minion bar crawls and trivia nights in DC. It was just such a great way to meet fellow Republicans. And I am so excited for, once the tyrants here lift the restrictions of 6 to a table and whatnot, that we can get back to doing those. And the last thing I want to say about Smug is he really is an incredible guy. I've had many great bosses, but Smug, even though I've always been his random assistant on the side. He is number one in my heart and in the hearts of all of the minions. So you guys are doing the Lord's work here. It's an honor to join you guys on the program today.
Boy, authenticity. He comes in, get a microphone all by himself, and he chooses to say nice things about you, Smug. How about that?
I mean, what else could you say, right? Nice guy.
That is true.
Great job. Outstanding work, Foldi. You
well done.
You raised money. There you go.
Well, guys, I look forward to coming back when it's not about my hair.
Now, and believe me, I'm not done with that hair yet. I feel like there's more to say. We're going to find another worthy.
All right, cut the interview. We're done here. We're done. I'm out. Foldi out. We're done. No comment.
He's going to get male pattern baldness at some point. I can feel it.
That should just be from old age, man. I'm 24. I've got time.
We'll see. Thanks for joining us, Foldi.
All right. Thanks to the best in the business.
All right.
There we go. Promises made, promises kept. Thank you so much to everyone who donated.
Promises kept. A very worthy cause. I do think that the cause Feeding America, I do think is very worthy. I'm very glad we did it. I would go no other place. I thought it was interesting, frankly, that they didn't give Foldi a hat tip for raising him $10,000. I thought that was a pretty good deal.
Right.
Yeah.
But outstanding interview. And now, folks, let us go on with the show, as they say. What do we have on the docket today, Josh?
Well, there's a couple of things we got to talk about first. The first is this court packing situation, which we get into with Grassley, because, he's in the center of all of that discussion. But Democrats actually rolled out a bill last week. And if you watch the press conference, it was just nothing short of hilarity. These people, just the dumbassery involved in their justifications for why they ought to blow up the Supreme Court. And it's like Hank Johnson, the dude that thinks that Guam's going to tip over. There's activists who are just completely out of touch, who've got the microphone and screaming and yelling. And anyway, the whole thing is completely a joke, except for the fact that they introduced legislation that would actually accomplish what they're trying to with flipping the court. And so we've had a lot of discussion about how serious this is. We bring it up with Grassley today, but knowing their history and knowing how Democrats have navigated the judicial wars over the years, can't you just kind of picture them adding 4 more seats, losing the majority, and then McConnell putting a whole bunch of right-wingers on?
I mean, that's the thing is they just don't learn. How many times does he have to say, you may regret this, and a lot sooner than you think? How many times must he punish you before you learn?
The parallels are amazing. It's not like it happened a long time ago. It's within the last, if you serve 2 terms in the Senate, you've had a front row seat to how shitty the boomerang effect is on the court packing plan. But yet, here we go again. It's a real shame. You hate to see it.
And the thing too is, I want to reiterate, we told you so. We warned you. This is their play. If they could in any way get some control of the Senate, they were going to package this all together. Right. HR 1, they wanted to do court packing. They wanted to eliminate the filibuster. It's 1, 2, 3. Get rid of the filibuster and then just steamroll their crazy agenda.
Totally. Adding DC as a state, it's just whatever. I said this on Twitter the other day, but it's totally true. No matter what the direct mail or digital fundraising copy was in 2020, if Democrats get control, they're going to do X, Y, and Z. Whatever that was very, very low key compared to what they're actually doing.
We undersold it. We actually undersold how crazy they were going to be, which is absolutely incredible when you think about it. Typically that copy is pretty hyperbolic, But turns out, we didn't go far enough for what they're trying to dream up here. And they're also bringing back a Green New Deal this week.
Yeah, it's and the thing is that it's worrisome how quickly Biden has shown he's going to cave. Like last week he made that announcement that he wasn't going to change the caps that President Trump put in place, and then after and then after the outrage, boom, within hours, flip flop.
He's entirely responsive to the left, and like there's one of two things happening, right? One of three things. One, he's an abject liar. He campaigned as a moderate who was sort of like trying to get the norms back into government, right? That was his thing. So either he's a liar. Two, he's just not running this place, right? Like he's actually absent, and like Ron Klain or Kamala or somebody is running the government because it's just entirely progressive. Or, three, maybe he's just like completely lost his mind.
I mean, that should not be considered out of the question. Let's be serious. We had journalists on TV and on Twitter being like, we need to evaluate whether President Trump could be suffering from some sort of a neurological situation. When the guy, you may have complaints about President Trump. The guy was on the ball. Like, you see him in those debates, the guy's all there. He knows what he's doing. He's sharp as a tack. But Biden, I don't know, man. That could be a concern.
Well, something's happening because he's certainly not the guy he ran as, for sure. Yeah. I mean, look, there's an element of that with Democrats every time they run a campaign. It's always like, oh yeah, I'm the moderate. And then I try to steal your wallet when you fall asleep as soon as I'm left. Like that's the way they roll. But this is a different level.
Yeah. It's worrisome. It's worrisome. And like I said, it's not going to be enough to point out the media's hypocrisy. We know our media in this country at this point is little more than a mouthpiece in the cheering section for the left. It's not enough to point out the hypocrisy. It's time to get up, dust ourselves off, and we got to unite and get rid of these folks. We got to vote them out.
That's right, which is a nice segue to one of the tools that the left has used here, certainly during the Trump administration, but now parlayed into use during the Biden administration. And it all stems from, you guys all remember the story of the Russian bounties.
Yeah.
Right? Big New York Times story.
This genuinely infuriates me. Like I've been on since this story broke of the fact that it was fake news, folks. It was fake news. Everything you'd heard about how, oh my gosh, you heard breathlessly these reporters, especially like on CNN and at the New York Times. Oh my gosh, President Trump, this is treasonous. He is allowing Vladimir Putin to put bounties on our soldiers. Fake news. It ended up being fake news, but here's what's funny. You think it's a coincidence we find out it's fake news only after the election?
Nope. Not just after the election, Smug, but after Joe Biden announces that he would like to withdraw troops from Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
The moment that he announces he wants to withdraw troops from Afghanistan, now they have to unring that bell that Vladimir Putin is trying to kill Americans in Afghanistan by putting bounties on their heads. So now finally the charade can end. And just for a reminder to all of our listeners, this wasn't just a one-off story, right? Oh. Like they wrote this as like an intelligence leak that the president and the IG and they don't want to discuss how this is happening, and some brave intelligence officer had to leak this to the media to get the truth out there. No, it was fake. It was entirely fake, and it became part of this broad narrative on broadcast, on cable, in newspapers, in magazines, on social media. It was mentioned by Joe Biden in his DNC acceptance speech. This was a coordinated campaign to lie about President Trump and to tip the election against him. And there's nothing, we don't get a do-over. There will be no special counsel, but we have an intelligence community that colludes with the media to lie to Americans every single day. And we got to figure it out.
Yep. So there was this really great thread on Twitter that Drew Holden at Drew Holden 360. If you don't follow him, great follow. The guy's got more threads than a damn knitting store, and they're all on target. He just pointed out because the thing is they never have to apologize. The media never has to apologize. The worst offender, as he points out, was the New York Times, who repeatedly said, breaking news, U.S. spies and commandos in Afghanistan alerted superiors as early as January to a Russian plot to pay bounties to kill U.S. troops. Straight up. And you didn't see it just coming out of the publications, because this is the game. It goes straight from them to the Democrat elected officials. And you had all the Dems line up in Congress saying, oh my gosh, this is treason. Holy cow, President Trump, how could you allow this to happen? Folks, he didn't, because it's not true.
Because it's not true. I mean,
no, they just move on. The media just moves on to a new allegation.
Yeah.
You know, I was very aware after this reversal of the Russian bounty story of what our media reporters, you know, the Brian Stelters of the world would say. And Brian has his show on Sundays, and he covered a lot of topics.
The potato, for those of you who don't know, that's the potato.
Yeah, so Brian Stelter has his show on Sunday. Do you think he talked about how he was wrong about the Russian bounties?
Nope.
How it was in fact a hoax?
Nope.
No. He, you know who he has? He has Malcolm Turnbull on, the former Australian Prime Minister. He has Malcolm Turnbull on to say, quote, what Murdoch has delivered largely through Fox News in the United States is exactly what Vladimir Putin wanted to achieve with his disinformation campaign.
You really said that?
That's a direct quote. So instead of admitting that you were part of a disinformation campaign run through media entities like CNN, Brian Stelter has another foreign politician come on to lecture Americans about how there's disinformation campaigns run by Fox
Here's
News.
the thing. So this touches on a couple things. Like, I think everyone at this point, all our listeners are well aware that CNN's ratings are tanking. Like, I've read statistics that they have halved since President Trump has left office. And they are looking for their next big bad. They're like, okay, we can say Marjorie Taylor Greene is the next threat to America. That didn't sink. You know, no one's worried about a single congresswoman. Then they're like, I think Tucker Carlson is the threat to America. It's Fox News. They're trying to find, you know, someone to focus their hatred and their hoaxes towards to juice those ratings, because they have to keep their audience angry. They have to keep their audience scared.
That's right.
It's part of their entire strategy to advance a progressive agenda that there needs to be this creeping fascism around every corner. That if we don't pass this bill or we don't pursue this policy, fascism's coming to America. And that's why, you know, I go on Twitter and I see promoted tweets from the Washington Post talking about QAnon, talking about January 6th.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? It's not by accident. It's because they need this perpetual drumbeat to keep everyone scared and watching television and clicking, and all of that helps them advance the policy objectives of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, completely right. I saw all of them tweeting out, by the way. I think Lynn Wood over the weekend had some particularly crazy remarks. I remember this attorney I guess he wasn't even Trump's attorney, but he was like truly a bizarre individual down in Georgia who was saying that, you know, all kinds of nonsense. But he showed up over the weekend at some rally talking about QAnon. And like, this is just some lawyer, right? I mean, he doesn't have any significance within the Republican Party whatsoever. I don't even think he's a Republican. I think we found out. But everybody, all the mainstream press are tweeting this guy out over the weekend as if he was giving like the State of the Republican Party address.
And that's the thing is they are the press is the mainstream media is constantly trying to keep the public scared and engaged, believing that there's some big bad wolf who's going to come and get you. They try. So the Russia thing for years they pushed. Folks, Russia's not even a top 10 country on earth by GDP. All right. If the US wanted, they could turn a couple switches and just end the country's economy. They're completely reliant on just one sector, the energy sector. Russia has zero actual bearing in the world. It's like they're complaining about Russia is like a 50-year-old Rottweiler with no teeth sitting in the corner that they're like, watch out for him. And then you've got a wolf in the house. You got a wolf in the kitchen tearing the place up. China is shown they're running concentration camps. They're able to bend multinational corporations to their will at the threat of, well, if you don't like how we run things with slave labor, hey, we can cut you out of one of the largest markets on earth. And like Nike, Disney, all of them bend
Yeah, which is why
Times,
American
Mike.
corporations are all wrapped around the axle with this Georgia voting rights thing, right? Because all of the woke left was pushing them to issue statements against Georgia's voting law, and all of them would like just blindly do it. And they're like, "Hey, by the way, you're operating in a country that has concentration camps like 15 miles from your facility. What do you think about that?"
Yeah, how many of those CEOs are going to sign a letter denouncing the weird concentration camps that China is running to make their products? They don't. They don't.
They won't. It's ridiculous. But look, all of this disinformation, misinformation stuff does have an interesting effect on the electorate. And our second segment is a kind of a fun one in that the studies have been done. This is from the New York Times. Political junkies might be interested to learn that conservative women are particularly blissful. About 40% say they are very happy. That makes them slightly happier than conservative men and significantly happier than liberal women. The unhappiest of all are liberal men. Only a fifth consider themselves happy.
I love also that this came, that this popped up. It's from the New York Times. Is anyone shocked? Is anyone shocked? I mean, I think essentially the basis of the Democrat Party is misery, right? Like they have to be miserable people to be a Democrat in the first place. The sky is falling. Everything is wrong. That's basically their platform.
The unhappiest of all are liberal men. Only a fifth consider themselves happy. Well, look, at least the liberal men consider themselves men to begin with, which is, I guess, a step in the right direction.
I mean, it's.
I assume it was a relatively small sample size. I would not imagine a lot of men will tell a pollster that they identify as being a liberal and also being very happy.
I mean, that is, if you think that's a tiny slice. They said only about 20% of liberal men consider themselves happy. Can you imagine? My official response as a conservative man, I consider myself very happy. If that were a choice on the poll, thank God everything's going well for me. I got my health.
If you're a liberal man and you respond to this poll, you're just reinforcing the patriarchy.
There you go.
That's right. Because first of all, it's gender exclusion to begin.
True.
Right. If you're segmented out to begin with in the poll, that's completely ridiculous. I mean, the funny thing to me though is that liberal women also second lowest, right? So like one of two things is going on there. They either are just also liberalism makes you depressed all the time, which I think there's something to, or the fact that they have to live with liberal men.
I also think so. There was, I want to say it was the New York Times who had a poll earlier that said there's a higher percentage of liberal women who currently are willing to date a conservative, a man of opposing viewpoint than liberal men, willing to date a conservative woman. So I think that also explains the happiness situation. Imagine being a liberal woman and your selections are liberal men. Like, ugh. Do I really want to deal with that?
I think it's a special project for this new Rumspringa that our conservative young men, you need to go out there and start dating a liberal woman and save her from these unhappy liberal men.
Oh my gosh.
That goes for conservative women. I mean, I'd say even there's got to be converse to the cause. For God's sake, 20%, only 20% of liberal men are happy. That is, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised, but holy shit, like 20%?
This is
80% are not happy? What?
This is the challenge for conservative women and conservative men. If you are still in seeking a partner, what you should do is try to use this summer as an opportunity to improve some lives out there.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to bump up that 20% is to have that liberal man become conservative. Like, holy moly. You mean there's barbecue and guns and liberty? I mean, things are starting to look up.
You don't have to apologize 4 times before you brush your teeth in the morning. Terrific.
Not bad. That percentage would go up.
But really, I mean, look, it all feeds into what we were just talking about, which is where your information flow comes.
Yep.
As a liberal, every day you're taught that there is some problem with you, with humanity, with America, with your race, with your views, with your whatever you choose to do, right? You are inherently a villain. and society has got to self-correct because you're a bad person, right? That's basically it.
So the left, I mean, has essentially mastered the art of, if you can keep them afraid, you can keep them in control. That's basically become their MO. And it segs perfectly into our next section, where there's some very interesting, I should say, numbers that came out over the weekend. I saw Nate Silver tweet this one out. The New York Times had a story showing that they asked the audience, when they polled folks, they said, test yourself. What percentage of people who get COVID have to get to the hospital? Think about that. Let's give the folks at home like a few seconds. Think about that. What percentage of the people infected with COVID do you believe have to go to the hospital?
Yeah.
Again, This isn't downplaying the virus, which is awful. It's just objective facts. Everybody get vaccines.
So this is all about where you get your information. This next part's great.
The correct answer is somewhere between 1 and 5%. 1 to 5% of people who get COVID have to be hospitalized. But Democrats polled think that the percentage is as much as 10 times higher. 41% of Democrats think that 50% of people who get COVID need to be hospitalized.
I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's like bubonic plague, kind of numbers. Like they think it's just essentially just like a death sentence.
It's like everybody sitting around eating Ebola popsicles.
Yeah.
And nearly 70% think it's 20% or higher.
Yeah. I mean, like we're talking like magnitudes higher, not even in the same neighborhood, not a couple multiples, who knows. We're talking magnitudes higher. They think it's magnitudes higher. And so that's part of it, is like you look at where the Democrats get their information now that we have information siloed in such a way, and you have CNN just pushing the fear button all day long. That's it explains a lot of the behavior. Like, part of me is thinking you can't blame these folks. They think you have to quadruple mask after you get the vaccine because they think it's a 50-50 chance. I'm in the emergency room if I catch this thing.
So you got to follow some liberals on Twitter because it's just fascinating. I mean, Joy Reid comes out and says that she's vaccinated. She's got all this stuff. She's still gonna double mask. And I mean, it's like, man, the information flow that is going to liberal partisans in America is going to take generations to undo. Like, I don't know when these people are actually going to return to society. They're so scared.
Yeah. Like QAnon might be like 3 Looney Tunes who have an internet connection, but you've got an actual media corporation with a cable news channel out here just pumping fear into folks, thinking that you got a 50-50 shot. You catch this, you're going straight to the ER. Just manipulating people to be afraid for their lives because they want ratings. It's awful.
You would think with all the navel gazing in the media about disinformation and, people getting bad information on, social media, or, they say Fox News is a problem or whatever, you would think that looking at this poll would be a wake-up call to every mainstream journalist in America. Mm-hmm. And that if you were on cable news on CNN or cable news on MSNBC, you would change or recalibrate your coverage to reflect reality, because you are honestly destroying this country. We cannot have an America that reopens if the people that make up that economy are too scared to leave their homes.
There's a Bloomberg opinion piece that dropped. The headline is straight up, "We must start planning for a permanent pandemic."
Unbelievable.
With coronavirus mutations pitted against vaccinations in a global arms race, we may never go back to normal. But that is the level of fear that's getting pumped in there.
Right. And like you said, Holmes, Joy Reid saying, I've gotten the first shot, I'm going to get my next shot, but I'm too scared to be flying. I no indoor activities. And the thing that's saddest about it, you read the replies.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And they say, me too. Here I am. Here's my picture of me double masking. I'm staying home. I'm too many variants, yada, 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 yada. And it's what you start to understand is this is a feature, not a bug.
It is a feature.
That MSNBC, CNN, they want you at home, watching on television, boosting their ratings, making them money. And that's what this is, fear porn. That's what this is.
That's what it is.
And it goes beyond. The funny thing is they're the tool for it. They're kind of like the middleman in this thing. You'd like to say that the media companies on the left are actually the perpetrators of all things bad. They are the perpetrators of a lot of things bad, as we just mentioned, but they are a part of the machine. The other thing that I've talked about fairly frequently on the program is the idea that the pandemic itself is as close to liberal ideal governance as you're ever going to see.
Yep.
This is what they want. This is not like some bad sort of emergency condition that they have to navigate. They actually want you to stay at home. They want to tell you how much money that they can send you, when you can work, whose kids get to go to school, when they get to go to school, what they learn. My God, we can't teach them American history. We've got to invent a new version of that.
Yep.
It's like everything that you've seen pile out over the last year, 13 months, is not an extraordinary emergency liberal view of how you ought to govern. It's how they want to govern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is it.
Like you heard what's his name, one of Obama's advisors say you should never let a crisis go to waste. This is
Rahm
exactly
Emanuel.
the point. Yep, it was Rahm Emanuel. Perfect thing. They just wanted, Green New Deal, everything they're pushing right now. They found a way to just weasel it in.
Well, I've started calling this Munchausen by pandemic. If you're not familiar with,
you need some smarts to pick that one.
Yeah,
up,
so
right?
Munchausen by proxy is when someone's mentally ill and they make, say, like a child sick so that they can get attention. But Munchausen by pandemic is basically people who want to be scared forever, double mask forever, despite the fact that they're vaccinated, because they don't want America to be reopened. And people like Joy Reid have a financial reason to want you to be home forever.
Yeah.
And we just got to call it what it is. And it's Munchausen by pandemic. It's not based in reality.
It's not based in reality. And Fauci's still out everywhere just contributing this hand over fist,
messaging nonstop.
So he provides an element of validation.
He went on her show. He went on Joy Reid's show.
Right.
And just lets her say this stuff.
I mean, can you imagine Fauci appearing on Ruthless?
Absurd.
Oh my God.
I would like that, honestly.
The man is actively aiding and abetting this hysteria, and it's like, I get it. You're an epidemiologist and the man has a lot of experience, but he's starting to get a little outside of his lane. Now he's talking about gun control.
Yeah. No, it's Phil Sims.
Unbelievable.
Doing color commentary. I mean, he is so far out of his depth. But I mean, to take this even beyond COVID and another situation that we're watching, the whole world is watching this week in Minneapolis with the trial of Derek Chauvin, and everyone, I don't care if you're a conservative, you're a liberal, you live in Minneapolis, you live anywhere in the world, is just sitting there white knuckles, like very concerned about how this is going to go down and what it means for the social fabric of our country. Like, regardless of what the outcome is, if he's found guilty, if he's found not guilty, if it's manslaughter, if it's murder, like whatever the list of possibilities, everyone is sort of sitting there horribly concerned about what's going to happen, as they should be. But all of these media companies have spent the last 2 weeks trying to drum up the unrest.
Yeah. You saw him sent there. It was that CNN reporter, right? Who was breathlessly trying to report that this riot and chaos to get everyone scared. And then you saw someone from the community walk up and be like, "You're the problem. You got to go. Just leave us alone."
Right. And they won't. Right. And to build into this discussion that we're having about where this like ultra liberal progressive mind pollutant comes from, there was a poll that was done. It's in a bunch of law enforcement literature that I've seen. We'll find it, but they did a poll of very liberal or very liberal respondents who believed that there were 1,000 or more unarmed black men killed by police in 2019. 1,000 or more.
Wow.
The actual number, according to the Washington Post, was 12.
Wow.
Right?
That's the thing. That's the thing.
And so, but then, like you even expanded a little bit, 34% of that same liberal or very liberal believe there was 10,000 or more unarmed black men killed by police. Now, if you live in a world where you believe that there are 10,000 or more unarmed black men killed by police, you're getting on the streets.
Yeah.
You are getting on the streets.
Yeah.
Because that is unbelievably horrible. I mean, look, let me just say, one is unbelievably horrible.
Yep.
Anyone is unbelievable, which is the discussion that we're having. The problem that we see is that the liberal and progressive information flow doesn't deal with the facts. They don't deal with the historical concern, the reason it's a problem today because of the tradition of discrimination in this country that has led us to this point. They don't have those discussions. Those are honest discussions. The discussion that they have would lead someone to believe there are 10,000 or more unarmed people being killed by police. That's nuts.
I mean, it's for all these companies like NBC News and all of those after 2016 started hiring reporters who have like the disinformation beat and whatever. Number one, you never heard them trying to correct after the Russian bounties. Number two, you never see them trying to address this absolute misinformation. The entire left has been brainwashed into thinking it's like hell on earth. And you won't get an apology from the left. It's not going to come through saying they're hypocrites. They're not accountable because it makes them money. You're not going to get it through pointing out that hypocrisy. It's going to be through elections.
Yep.
No, you've got all these disinformation reporters who their entire beat is chasing down some grandmas who believe in QAnon.
Yeah.
But they won't correct all of the liberal misinformation on coronavirus infections, and they're certainly not going to try to correct the stats that Holmes just mentioned.
Right. But the bottom line is what you referred to, Duncan, is it's the damage that it does to society.
Yep.
Right. Look, if we're having a partisan debate, so be it. I mean, look, there are two sides. Everybody's yelling at each other. Americans have long since processed partisanship and people taking liberties with the facts. But when you are, as a matter of practice, educating half this country with facts that are not only not true, but are actively undermining every single sort of institution in our country and actively turning Americans on each other, which is what you're seeing in Walmarts when you've got a guy whose mask slips below his nose, which what you're seeing happening in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, right?
Yep.
Those are truly problematic events because the fabric of our society is being tested. And when you make money, when your job is to try to pull that fabric even further, you suck. I mean, I'm just going to say you are the scum of the earth.
That is it.
That's it. And I don't think we're going to get an apology from any of these people anytime soon, but I'd sure as hell love if they ran into trouble with viewership,
Yeah. I mean, that's the only good news of any of this is that their viewers have dropped by like 50%.
Yeah. Which is why they're more conservative, happy conservatives, because they're not watching that mess.
There you go.
Oh man.
So I guess I want to do this seg. Speaking of happy conservatives, not just me, but our guest that we have on the show today. I am so excited, folks. I've been a huge fan of Senator Grassley for some time. Absolute Renaissance man, runs one of the best Twitters out there, and probably one of the senators I can relate to the most. I like Dairy Queen, and I wish the History Channel showed more history. So I'm very excited about this interview. I say we get right into it.
I want to welcome to the program somebody I'm a huge fan of. I know Smug is a huge fan of, an absolute legend in Republican politics, certainly in Iowa politics, Senator Chuck Grassley. Welcome to the program.
I'm glad to be with you anytime. And if this is a kickoff, I'm glad to be selected as your first person.
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
Listen, it's always the first person when you're on, right?
Okay.
I mean, you don't have a podcast until Chuck Grassley comes on.
I did know that I wasn't the first one to open up your.
But truly, I mean, I've been very much looking forward to this one. You've definitely been one of my favorite personal senators for as long as I can recall. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Glad to be with you, of course, Smug.
So one of the things we wanted to dabble into before we get into the serious politics, and there's plenty of serious stuff to talk about these days, but one of the things you are world renowned for is your workout regimen. Now, I've heard senators talk when I worked up there and now since. They are in awe of the regimen that you keep up. Tell us a little bit about, you have a regular running schedule. Do you push-ups? You got all the dials spinning.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. I started at age 65 to run because I visited so many nursing homes and I didn't want to have the athletic director in these nursing homes have a hard time making me to do little things like this, Yeah. And so I decided I was going to start running. And I was a runner for 15 years. And now I'm in my 22nd year of more like shuffling along, if you'd let me get that.
Well, I've seen video. It looks a lot better than shuffling to me. It looks like you definitely beat Smug and I know that.
I think you got me in a workout plan for sure.
And I do it every day now, at least 6 days a week. I better be honest with you.
Amazing.
I used to do it 4 times, 3 miles a day, and or 4 days a week, I should say. And then I decided 2 or 3 years ago to do 6 days, 2 miles, so I can handle that better now.
Amazing.
And the last time I did push-ups, I could do 30.
There you go.
But I used to do 50.
So legend has it last fall you tested positive for COVID and never broke your running routine. Is that true?
That's true, and I did that for the sole reason that when I went to the hospital and I was only there 3 hours, that they tried to convince me that I needed to have some of this new stuff like the President Trump had, and they said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "There's nothing wrong with me." And I told her, the nurse, when I left, I said, "If I can't breathe in the morning after my run, I'll call you up and I'll come in and get the treatment." And so I did it not just because it was part of my regular exercise, but I was asymptomatic. So that tells you something. I was a little fatigued, but I did make a point of doing it just to test to make sure whether my COVID might be getting worse.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Well, we salute you for at any point in life being able to at least double the workout regimen of Smug and I.
Yeah.
But one of the things that put you on Smug's radar as his all-time favorite was that you were really like one of the first senators, Republican or Democrat, to make personal use of Twitter. And you were very early.
Incredible. I mean, could be the best senator on Twitter, folks. If you don't follow Senator Chuck Grassley at Chuck Grassley and at Grassley Works, follow those accounts now.
Well, it shouldn't surprise you. I was one of the first people to use a fax machine.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. Right. Innovating at every stage.
So it's whether this is the latest or there's something coming along later that I will use that maybe isn't in my vocabulary yet. I'm going to do everything I can to enhance public discussions of issues, try to engage my constituents in commenting things to me. I tend to do everything I can to make what I call the process of representative government work. And if you're going to have representative government, you got to have dialogue between those of us that are elected and the people we serve. And from that standpoint, Twitter's just part of it. Instagram's part of it. I always tell my people when I'm out at my county meetings, I say something like, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or you can get all my speeches and all my press releases on grassley.senate.gov. And then I also tell them that if I got 3 million constituents, I don't see only a small percentage of those constituents face to face. So you need to email me when you can't see me face to face and expect an answer. If you don't get an answer, write me a nasty note and ask me why I didn't answer your thing, because I do want to answer every piece of mail that I have. And thank God I have some people come to my town meetings and says, he's right, he did answer my email. So whether it's Twitter like your question started out with, or whether it's email or my 99 county visits that I have every year,
amazing.
It's all about representative government. You got to know what's on your constituents' minds if you're going to represent them.
That's right.
And to be clear, you do run your own Twitter account. All those gems about assumed dear dead, pigeon scenario, Dairy Queen, all of it is from your genius mind, correct?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if I got a staff person around that doesn't have big fingers and thumbs like I do, and I can get them to type it in, they might type it in.
Fantastic.
The pigeon identification series of tweets has been a rock solid number one draft pick for almost anybody on Twitter.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, you should go look it up.
I can tell you, I do a lot of Twitter to have a little fun too.
Yeah.
But that particular tweet was not to have a little bit of fun. It was to send a message to my staff that I was okay, even though we hit a deer that I couldn't find. And so I have to assume it was dead.
Assume the deer's dead. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I love it. It's fantastic. Well, one of the things that we wanted to get into, because you have been at the center of Republican efforts on the judiciary to build out what was an extraordinary, I think probably the biggest accomplishment of the Trump administration in terms of the federal court systems and the Supreme Court. And you were the front and center of all of that. And now you look and liberals appear to be trying to push the Biden administration into a court packing plan, going as far as to introduce legislation last week. Give us your thoughts on that.
Well, the best thought is expressed by President Biden himself when he's a senator. When he talked about FDR trying to do it in the 1938 and 39 period of time, he said it was a boneheaded idea. Mm-hmm. It is a boneheaded idea. But more importantly, it deals with one of the few institutions of our government that has the most respect. Mm-hmm. It'd be the Supreme Court. It would politicize the Supreme Court. It would ruin its credibility if it was seen as a political body, and that's the bad part of it. And couldn't be expressed any better by Justice Breyer a couple weeks ago when he said practically the same thing, or it couldn't be said any better by Justice Ginsburg before she passed away. And I don't know how many months before she passed away, but she said 9 is the right number. And then you also got to think about, if you want balance in the Supreme Court, I think Biden was again quoted during the campaign, maybe early in his campaign for the presidency this time, before he even had the nomination. He said, the way you get balance, and the reason this hit me, because I have said the same thing, the way you get balance is when you have a Democrat president, you get that type of people on the Supreme Court. When you have a Republican president, you get a different type of people on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And over a period of time, it's balanced out.
Yep.
You know.
Right. And when you talk to your colleagues, because look, at some point in everybody's Senate career, they come to the conclusion that what you just said, that it's absolutely ridiculous to try to screw around with the Supreme Court and try to pack the court or do some sort of extraordinary measure to try to slant the court in your favor. When you talk to your colleagues, how much of this do you think is just a show to the progressive base, or do they actually mean it? I mean, do they really think that this is something they would execute?
Something Pelosi told me tells me that it's kind of a show. She was reported that very same day as saying, at least until this commission that the president appointed comes up, she isn't going to bring it up. And I'll bet you she won't be bringing it up anyway, because I doubt if there'd be enough I doubt if any Republican would approve it in the House of Representatives. There'd be several Democrats that wouldn't. I doubt if it could get 50 Democrat votes in the United States Senate. So I think it's playing to the base.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what it appears to be.
But dangerously playing to the base. If you believe in the Constitution and the separation of powers and everything like that, and quite frankly, it just shows you how radical the left is in the Democratic Party.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to pick up on, because you've been around a while. You've seen almost everything there is to see in terms of both parties, the maturation to where we're at now within the Republican Party and within the Democratic Party. it seems to me, just from an outsider's perspective, looking at the Democratic Party now, they are further left than we ever could have envisioned 10, 15, 20 years ago. Is that the case from your perspective? Is this just a much, much more liberal set of senators than we've ever seen before?
Well, all you got to do is listen to what Biden said and stands he took as a member of the Senate for 36 years and see how he has changed. And it can only be because the progressives are running the Democratic Party. And what's scary about it is if that's the direction of the Democratic Party for the next 50 years, let's say, and they're headed there very quickly right now, it's very dangerous because we've been a country that is more operated within the 80% of what you would call the center. Now, that's a pretty big center, but if you eliminate 10% of the Republicans on the extreme right and 10% of the Democrats on the extreme left, then you had about 80 votes left in the United States Senate. And quite frankly, it's probably more like 40% of the far left. So you're going to find your middle ground in the 50%, that's about 10% Democrat and 40% Republican.
Wow. That's an incredible shift.
Yeah, that is something.
And you mentioned just Biden himself. You worked alongside then Senator Biden for so many years, and particularly on the Judiciary Committee. Do you think he really believes this stuff, or is he just basically ceded all the sort of agenda to the more progressive elements within his administration and within Congress?
Well, I think the word legacy tries to drive it. And I think he expressed that legacy he wants. And I think he speaks from the standpoint of people have told him, rather than what he actually believes, that he could make dramatic changes like FDR did. And and those dramatic changes that FDR made would be very conservative compared to where he's headed if he gets away with it. And I don't think he's going to get away with it, but that's what I think he is. So I think he's thinking about his legacy. He's been sold a bill of goods, and that's why it's so easy to go along. Just think of what happened Thursday or Friday. He put out something on refugees, and then a whole bunch of people get worked up. When I say a whole bunch of people, it only takes 5 or 6 of the most socialist members of the United States House of Representatives to say that he's not living up to what he said. So Saturday, he says he's going to get back to more numbers on refugees about May the 15th. The ironic thing about it is he says, we can't do 2 things at a time. If you don't have a president that can handle 5 things at a time, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, that was very concerning to me, is how quickly he can cave to the further left elements. I thought that was really something. Is within a matter of hours, he absolutely flip-flops on his position. That's definitely worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and immigration itself is an issue. Obviously, you've been neck deep on for years and years, one of the leaders in the conservative movement on trying to secure our border. What do you make of what's going on right now?
It's a crisis, and it's a crisis because they didn't listen to the professionals. The Border Patrol leaders, when I was at the Rio Grande 3 weeks ago, I think it was, that they had a chance to brief the transition team before the president was sworn in. And they said, just leave things the way they are. If you want to process people faster than Trump was, do it in an orderly way. You can tell they didn't listen. At that time, we had 841 people cross the border that had criminal records. We had more drugs coming into the country. So very law enforcement problem. It's a public health problem when 10% of the people that are tested, and they aren't all tested, but they have COVID, so it's a public health problem. It's a national security problem when you arrest a couple people from Yemen who are on our terrorist list coming into the country.
Right.
If you don't secure your border, you're not a sovereign nation. You two and I could not go to a foreign country without their permission. Where do we get the idea that anybody can come to our country anytime they want to without our permission.
Yep.
And we just would like to find out what's wrong by having a judiciary hearing on this, and Democrats won't even give us Republicans a judiciary committee hearing on the problems at the border.
Unbelievable. And that highlights another problem, obviously, with you not having a gavel in a 50-50 Senate. So let's talk politics for a little bit. My sense is that Republicans. So I was in 09, I was working with Leader McConnell, with all of you, on our road back, and it felt like it took several months to sort of get grip again. After the Bush administration, it took us a little while to begin to build back cohesiveness within the party. I feel like, from an outsider's perspective, watching what you all are doing, that the party within the Senate is way ahead of where we were in 09, which ultimately did lead to the comeback of the Republican Party. What's your sense? Do you feel like Republicans are sort of on the rise again, and could we recapture that majority in 2022?
Definitely. And I think the Democrats' progressive agenda has made it easier for us.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at a little bit of history. I don't get worried about, maybe you haven't heard it so much in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but since November, all you heard about was the Republican Party's lost its direction. That is not true at all. That's the figment of the imagination of the liberal press. And so consequently, just a little bit of history. When I came to the United States House of Representatives as the only Republican member from the state of Iowa in a delegation of about 7 or 8, we only had 140 members in the Iowa House, and everybody was saying the Republican Party was dead. And maybe I was even feeling that way. 6 years later, we had a Republican president, and we had a majority in the United States Senate. Right. We didn't know how to run the United States Senate. We had a lot of learning to do. What do you do now? Senator Baker was the new leader. What do you do now? We didn't know what to do. And of course, Senator Byrd was telling him how to run the Senate,
That is one thing in history. We haven't had a lot of it lately because we've kind of flopped back and forth within decades, but Republicans were out of power for a long time. I remember after the Democrats had held the House for 40 some odd years and Republicans came in, everybody was looking around like, anybody know how to run this place?
Yeah. And don't forget, our party is from the grassroots up.
Right.
Everybody, this is something that people are bringing in about Trump. Does he run the party? Is he a leader? Time will tell that.
Right.
But don't worry about, it's not a top-down thing. If you're a leader, you got to have some followers.
That's right.
And it develops from the top up. Why would the progressives be in the majority now in the United States Senate if it wasn't for Senator Sanders building that up to where they are now and bringing Biden under the umbrella?
Mm-hmm.
And he's very much under the umbrella, and he doesn't realize it's raining. Anyway, it's the same because we don't have one Republican Party. We have 50 different Republican parties. We have 50 different Democrat parties. And it really comes to a head with who they nominate in 2024 for both parties.
No question about it. That kind of analysis, I couldn't agree more. Everything that you said is completely 100% accurate. And I think you get for our listeners, you get a good understanding of how this guy has been the most popular person in Iowa for as long as he has, because that's exactly right. There are many elements of the Republican Party, and you've got to figure out how to cobble together winning coalitions over time. You, sir, are a part of a winning coalition forever. And I just have to ask you here, are you going to run for re-election? Because we need you.
Do you know I was asked that on Iowa Public Radio this very day?
Really?
And I'm going to give you the same answer. Get back to me in September, October, November.
Okay.
Well, I'm hoping that's a yes, though. I'll be the first to say I support you on this run.
But isn't 1 year long enough to campaign?
Well, it is for you because I feel like you've been campaigning every year that you've been in public service. The only difference is whether you call it a campaign or not.
Well, I wouldn't want to call this one a campaign for 12 months.
Okay. All right.
And that's not a yes yet.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier going into history, one of a number of things I agree with you, Senator, is the state of the History Channel. I miss the actual history programming, like when they had with Kenny Rogers on the old West, all the old shows that they actually had on the History Channel. So that is a topic I certainly sympathize with you on.
Well, you should, because it's intellectually dishonest to call yourself a history channel if you don't have any history on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm lucky once in a while to find a little bit of history, and I'll let people know on Twitter.
Exactly. That's one of the many benefits, folks, of following him is you will get an alert from Senator Grassley if an actual history show is on the History Channel.
How they got their credibility when they were first on. They had history 24 hours a day.
Yep.
And I doubt if they have it 24 minutes a day now.
I love the strong stand against the History Channel. That's fantastic stuff. We have three very important questions that we ask every guest of the program, and I'm particularly fascinated to hear your answers. The first one is your last meal on Earth, Senator Grassley. What would it be?
Ice cream with a side of pork chop.
Perfect. And, could we make this a two-part question? You, like myself, are also a Dairy Queen enthusiast. What's your Dairy Queen order?
Snickers Breeze.
Perfect.
Snickers. They have Breeze, but they have some Blizzard. Snickers Blizzard.
Perfect. Absolute perfect answer.
I love that.
And
I feel like that's
there's another place where big corporations played a bad part in my life. They until a year ago, for 3 or 4 years, they didn't have Snickers, and we could never find out why. Finally, they got it back on. I'm not sure I had anything to do with that, but so I had to go to Reese's for
the backup.
For my backup, and that didn't turn out to be so bad. But I'm glad they have Snickers back. Can you imagine a big corporation like Dairy Queen trying to decide that maybe Snickers is not good for me? Because I'll bet you that's what they were doing.
Yeah, it's one of the best things on the menu. That's a poor decision on their part. Thank God it's back.
Yeah.
The indignity of having to go to Reese's is something else. I appreciate that. All right. So this is actually very interesting question to you because you've dedicated your life to public service. If you weren't in public service, if you were never in politics, what would you be doing with your life?
Well, 60 years ago, I wouldn't have said farming, but today it would be farming. Mm-hmm. I was born on a farm. I never intended to be a farmer. My dad died at age 67 in 1960, and then I started farming. For the 10 years before that, as I was getting out of high school and going to graduate school and everything you do to get degrees, I was going to be a political science professor. I never finished my PhD at the University of Iowa because I was elected to the legislature and I had so many mouths to feed, I couldn't afford to go back. Mm-hmm. So, but I was intending to be a political science professor.
That's really interesting. So,
but now, if I'm not in the United States Senate, it'll be a lifetime as a farmer.
So tell me about, because this intersects with our Twitter conversation. I had read that initially when you started using Twitter, you had your phone that you kept on your head under your cap as you were driving the combine. Is that true?
Yeah, since the mid 80s.
Incredible.
I did that. But it's for a very practical reason. Tractors make a lot of noise and you can't hear the phone ring. So when it vibrates and you got it on your head, you can answer it right away.
That makes sense. That's good thinking.
That is practical thinking. Absolutely brilliant. All right. So the third and final question, you're going to have to bear with me, but what it is basically is to test what motivates Senator Grassley. And there are two elements. You're either motivated by the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat, or avoiding the agony of defeat. So, Senator Grassley, what motivates you more, the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat?
Agony of defeat.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
So one of the things I'm going to take into consideration on my decision to run for re-election or not is I had a staffer, now deceased. He was a former member of the Iowa House of Representatives starting about 8 years after I was first elected. We become very good friends. He was Speaker of the House for 2 years and then Minority Leader probably for 20 years. And then later on, his daughter took his place and she was Speaker of the House, and she got out a couple years ago, and Pat Grassley, now my grandson, Speaker of the Iowa House.
Wonderful.
This is what he said to me one time. You know what General MacArthur said? Old soldiers never die; they just fade away. You're too young to know that.
No. We read history too.
Okay. Well, thank God. But anyway, he said, senators never die. They will run just one time too often. But listen, that sounds like we're ending a program on a kind of a sinister basis. I want you to know I love being a United States Senator, even with you folks. Well, you make it enjoyable. But I love my work, whether I'm dealing with you or I got to deal with a lot of people that I very much disagree with.
I don't know anybody who has enjoyed it more or showed more other senators, young senators, how you're supposed to do it. You've been engaged from moment one. An absolute pleasure to talk to you today, Senator Grassley. I appreciate it.
Can I say one other thing about my work?
You can.
Just remember, I have not lost a single election in the period of time since I was elected to the House in 1958, the Iowa House.
That's a record.
Well, let's just fusing the two together, your undefeated piece and then being motivated to avoid the agony of defeat. The minions, which is the listeners of this program and followers of Smug, and all of the listeners of this program will work their tails off to ensure that you return if that's what you want to do.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't I be derelict if I didn't thank you for this opportunity to communicate with my constituents?
Yes.
And I assume many more people than are my constituents, but at least my constituents, I say thank you to the Iowans for participating with Josh and Schmug.
Oh, it's great.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Senator. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks. Goodbye. So I just love him. I mean, he's so good.
Yeah, right?
Been around for so long. People who don't follow the ins and outs of politics all the time don't know where, some of the leading edge conservative arguments against, corporate America or against liberal immigration or, liberal jurisprudence, all that stuff, where it derives from. Grassley, because he's not like a showboat, you don't associate him with all those things. But if you look back through his career, he absolutely is.
I mean, and that was honestly probably one of my favorite interviews that we have had on this show. Thank you so much, Senator Grassley. That was awesome.
Totally. And listen, if he runs, I think a mission of the show is just to make sure that he runs.
Yeah, right. We should completely focus on making that happen.
Right. Everybody should sign up. Please, Senator Grassley, run, please.
The people cry out.
The people cry out.
And that's a banger of an episode, man. I told people this would be a good one. Awesome. It was absolute fire. So thank you, all our listeners. Thank you so much. The numbers keep going up. Keep telling your friends to subscribe. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Subscribe, tell your friends. So until Thursday, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.